So everything is already set up. Just waiting for the Dato to come to begin the interview. This is Dato's office. Okay. Thank you very much, Dato, for having me here, and also I feel blessed, that you able to spend your time to see me, and we're going to have a very good discussion about many issues, particularly in regard to your portfolio as a foreign minister. So, and I feel grateful today to see you today. So I think and probably our viewers also want to listen from your point of view, because for me this is considered as an exclusive interview for me with you. And first question that I want to ask you as a foreign minister, I know you recently has announced a new Malaysia framework on foreign policy. So actually there are many people argue what's new and what's old Malaysia in terms of framework on foreign policy, because many things that there's nothing much different previously foreign policy in the previous government and the current government. So can you elaborate on this matter, and also can you explain to our viewers about the new framework of foreign policy?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's always good to see you and to discuss matters pertaining to nation building and now on foreign policy. In Malaysia, this is the first time we have a change in government, and because of that, we need to explain ourselves what would be our foreign policy. When we come up with the framework, we are very sure that we are not talking about a new foreign policy altogether, but it is a framework of Malaysia Baru's new foreign policy. This is to explain to people that this is a new administration, and we have to show and to share what the framework is. Later, I found out that we have never published our foreign policy framework, so it is the first. And we have done it in a very participatory manner. First, I stood in Parliament presenting a motion that, using Prime Minister Mahathir's maiden speech as Prime Minister at the UNGA in 2018, to form the basis of foreign policy framework. Number two, we had consultations, including by the formation of the Foreign Policy Consultative Council at the Ministry, and we have several other discussions. And I took the liberty of using an already documented discussion by about 60 people who can be considered the who's and who in Malaysian foreign policy, which was done by ISIS back a few years ago, but was not acted upon by the previous administration. And we take it because these are gold. I mean, this is gold. Real discussion. They put a lot of man hours. Now, there are two things here. Foreign policy require no new fundamentals. So the fundamentals remain the same. For example, we are not going out or ditching any international bodies. No matter how weak they are, like OIC, we will still remain in OIC, and we will try and help improve. But there may be new approaches. For example, when we talk about becoming a modern progressive Muslim nation, we cannot do it alone. You have to talk to others. So we choose to talk to Pakistan and Turkey, and even to Qatar and to Indonesia, Iran, and we remain open and inclusive, anyone at all, to work on certain projects. So this is a new approach, meaning to say you just cannot wait. Alright. Number two, we want to introduce new approaches. For example, we want to be more proactive in making decisions at international forum. In the past, we wait until we become a member of a particular body, then you become active. For example, we have been a member of the UN Security Council a couple of times. So during that time, we are active. When we are not active. That shouldn't be the way. You should be active all the while. But what if you are not a member? Then you have to work with like-minded countries. And number three, there are various other actors. The CSOs, the members of parliaments, the business communities. So we have to work with them. So we are giving more room for non-state actors to play. So what is not changing in the foreign policy is the fundamental. What is new or changed is the approaches and new ideas that we want to bring to the table.
Okay. I have a privilege to read the new framework table by you, I think, recently. And one of the things that I think the highlights of the framework actually about people-centric. So meaning that we are moving, our foreign policy moving towards state-centric before to people-centric. But even that as well, there are many debates, argue with what kind of people-centric that new Indonesian government to apply, because our infrastructure, for example, like education system now, not really conducive in terms of explaining about foreign policies, and not many people knows about foreign policy. Only those people who involved in foreign policy that they know. Unlike other countries, for example, like Indonesia and Thailand, they're very aggressive. Put some curriculums, subjects in their curriculums about foreign policy to the very young age of students. So at least they get exposure about foreign policy. So now, in the context of Malaysia, what kind of people-centric actually that you want to propagate?
There are a couple of things. Number one, when it comes to the curriculum design in schools and universities, I don't think now is a good time for us to ask Ministry of Education to add new points or new topics. But we want to enhance our public diplomacy work. I have done several roadshows at universities. We hope to go to schools and organize a program. For example, 2020 is the 75th anniversary of the UN. So we have appointed Professor Ridwan Osman, who is a member of my consultative council, to head a committee to do public diplomacy in Malaysia. So organizing program for universities, for schools, and so on and so forth. Second is to enable our members of parliament, civil society organization, youth and women, and all other CSOs to work on a more cohesive manner when it comes to activities overseas. Many people are doing all kinds of things, but we are not very cohesive. It's not about control, but facilitation and to be cohesive so that people know, oh, this is actually foreign policy. The other thing is, of course, trying to impress upon people that foreign policy actually begins at home. Or another way of looking at it is, foreign policy is an extension of domestic policies and programs and projects. So we need to impress upon rakyat and the people that foreign policy is not elitist, that it belongs to all of us, that what we do in our own backyard has some international impact, even if it is small, but it still matters. And say climate change, for example, it sounds scientific, it looks like it is under Minister Yeo Baying and Minister Xavier, but it is also something that people in the kampong should know, that if you dirty the river, the effect will go to the sea, and then you are indirectly involved in pollution, and we should all be involved in trying to preserve climate. So we are trying to do that in a certain way.
Okay. Now we are moving towards, because we in December already, we're moving towards next year, it's going to be year 2020. because year 2020 very significant in our context, you know, with Vision 2020 before. So, as a minister, you know, what you wish to see either in our politics or for policy or even you personally to happen in the year 2020? What is your wish?
I think, as a politician, I think 2020, especially in May, will be the second year or the second anniversary of the PH government. We have to look at it very seriously. We have to do our self-reflection or muhasabah in a very serious manner, and we must achieve certain things in 2020 in all of the areas. I always say that when it comes to our manifesto, there are two parts of it. On the one part is the ideals of democracy, freedom and human rights and rule of law, the reform that we need to do. I think we need to expedite because people are waiting and we seems to be a little slow in fulfilling our promises. Some are low-hanging fruits, we don't seem to be able to move. We need to move in the more serious manner. The second part is of course more complex. This is about growth and economics and trade and business. I think people want to see actual realization of foreign investment, the easiness to do business. I think the business community, they know that we have some trouble when we started, but they want the second year to be fulfilled in a greater sense. Now, in foreign policy work, next year or year 2020 is going to be very interesting. Number one, we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. We have outlined 4 areas that we want to participate in actively. Number one is to get as many countries as possible to support the idea of the reform of the UN Security Council. Secondly, there is a group of CSOs trying to come up with activities about the UN that we need. So we have encouraged our CSOs to also take part actively. Third, in 1995 there was the United Nations Women Conference in Beijing. So in 2020 there is a Beijing plus 25 programs. We want to co-host some activities here and perhaps in the region and also in the UN. And number 4, Malaysia is chairman of one of the committee on non-proliferation agreement, and this has got something to do with criminalizing war, and so we want to do this. But we are also collecting information from other ministries. I think there are several ministries with certain activities that they want to promote. Secondly, next year is Visit Malaysia year, 2020. And what is interesting, number 3 is this. Australia is now looking Southeast Asia. And they have declared 2020 as Malaysia Focus Year. So you can expect a lot of Australian activities being focused on Malaysia. Not only tourism, but even in the scientific areas and so on and so forth. But most importantly, we are hosting APEC 2020 in November. And APEC 2020 is important not only because we are hosts, but because for the last 10 years, APEC works on a framework called the Bogor Goals. It expires this year. So they are awaiting for what is the next 10 years. What is the framework for the next 10 years? Is it going to be called KL Goals or KL whatever? But what is important is not just the name, but what is the content. For Malaysia, I think shared prosperity is something that we want to put forward. I'm not saying that shared prosperity is going to be for the next 10 years the goals of APEC, but I think shared prosperity will feature prominently in whatever that is going to be the outcome of APEC 2020. So 2020 is going to be a very interesting year, inshallah.
So thank you very much, Dato, to share with us so many new information. I think for me, then I think perhaps next time probably we can meet again also and share more information about actually with regard to your ministry and also politics for Malaysia and current government as well. So thank you very much. So hope to see Dato again in the future. Saya review Menteri, best experience, enjoy, and Dato Saifuddin also easy to approach, senang sembang dengan dia, dan I will share this moment with you. So if you have any comment about this interview, you can put the comment at the bottom, and also please subscribe to my channel, and also